It's one of those moments where we can look back and say, well, we were right. Well, we warned you. And when I say we, I mean all of us out there, all of you watching this channel who are smart enough, switched on enough, and resistant enough to propaganda to realize that what happened in late February, early March, at the beginning of the Russia-NATO-Ukraine conflict, was indeed a mainstream media propaganda operation. Now, of all places, this has actually been uncovered by the Adelaide University. Big thumbs up to them. Shout out for the Adelaide University. Well done. Shout out for declassifiedos.org, who actually exposed this story, and to a journalist called Peter. Well done. So I'm very happy to bring you this story, guys. The Adelaide University has actually uncovered that in the beginning of the situation between Russia and Ukraine, in the first week of the conflict, a massive organized pro-Ukraine influence operation was actually underway from the early stages of the conflict. Now, overall, the study found automated bot accounts to be the source of around 80% of all tweets in the data set. So we're talking about Twitter. We're talking about 3.5 million tweets with the hashtag I stand with Ukraine in the first week. Now, remember in the first week, everyone was out there going crazy, putting Ukrainian flags in their profiles and saying, I stand with Ukraine. All these Western leaders and Western governments were committing money and weapons and billions of dollars. Well, guess what? It was no accident. It was a coordinated propaganda attack. Now, the way they do it is they have the algorithm, they have the big platforms on their side. So people like me, people like us out there, we're absolutely disadvantaged in the informational war. We're on our own. Not only we're on our own, they do everything possible to stop us, to demonetize, deplatform, to censor, to basically stop us from bringing you the news. Now, let's just have a look at the data here, and I'll bring you this on screen. On the 24th of February, pro-Ukraine bot activity suddenly burst into life. In that first day of the conflict, hashtag I stand with Ukraine was used in as many as 38,000 tweets every hour, rising to 50,000 tweets an hour by day 3 of the conflict. Now, these are not people tweeting. These were bots. And this has been uncovered that none other than the Adelaide University in Australia. So well done to Australia. Well done to the Adelaide University for actually uncovering this. And here's a graph showing the hourly frequency of the selected stand with hashtags. Now, the anti-Russian hashtag I stand with Ukraine was pushed mainly by automated bots, and it flooded Twitter in the first week of the Russian invasion. But of course, we call it not invasion, we call it liberation. And we know now that it wasn't an invasion, it was actually a way of the Russians to demilitarize and denazify the opponents in the area, including NATO. Now, given the apparent long-range planning for this conflict, cyber experts expressed a surprise that Russian cyber and internet responses were so lagged. And I'm talking to you now, Russia. I'm talking to the ambassador in Canberra. I'm talking to the consul in Sydney. I'm talking to all of you. You lost the informational war. In fact, you're still losing it. And it's no coincidence. The West is very, very strong in this. As you can see from the statistics, millions and millions of automated bots firing away hashtags and basically popularizing the idea of people supporting Ukraine. And it's no coincidence that in the beginning of the war, we had influencers and TikTokers and YouTubers and Twitter people all of a sudden becoming Ukrainian war experts. They went from talking about lipstick and taking photos of their lunch, and their gym routines to talking about the Ukrainian war. It's unbelievable that this happened, but we know now that it was not an accident. We know many of these people were basically as part of the system. So the bots automatically flood the platforms. And then all of the sheep and the sheeple out there who go with the current thing, they just go and follow trend. They follow suit. So very interestingly, the I stand with Russia hashtag was very small, reaching only 4,000 tweets an hour. Now that's because it was natural. And after just a few days of the operation, the pro-Russian hashtag activity had dropped away completely. Why is that? That's because all of the pro-Russian accounts were blocked all over the place. And many people were censored if they spoke up against NATO, against the deep state, the cabal, and the New World Order, which was, fighting Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. So what's so significant about this, guys? This research paper released by the Adelaide University confirms mounting fears that social media has covertly become what researchers call a critical tool in information warfare, playing a large role in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Adelaide researchers tried their best to be non-committal in describing the activities of fake Twitter accounts, although they had found that the mass majority, over 90%, were anti-Russian messages. Now, guys, this is what we call informational warfare at its best. And this is a big call. I hope Russia listens here. You lost the informational war in the first days of the war. right? It doesn't matter how many tanks you have, how many missiles you have. It doesn't matter how many millions of people you can mobilize. If you're losing the informational war, you're in trouble, because then the whole world goes against you. All these woke governments, all these people in Sweden, Germany, the British, everyone who's committing money into there, everyone who's throwing billions of dollars and billions of dollars in weapons into the conflict. Well, they were inspired by fake Twitter accounts, fake bots, hashtag I stand with Ukraine, everywhere. A lot of people fell for it. But people who watch this channel, the Aussie Cossack channel, didn't fall for it. I mean, a few of you in the comments were a little bit upset in the first days, but now we can see a full turnaround. We see people are awake. And what we need to acknowledge and step back and acknowledge today, being the 4th of November, that war is won in the informational battlefield, right? We've seen now, you can have a massive army, you can have a massive fleet, you can have a massive air force, you can have tens of thousands of tanks. But if you've lost the informational war in the first few days, it makes it very difficult for your troops on the ground. And in particular, the Russian-Ukraine situation, because they pumped so much support. They got the whole world, basically the Western world, of course, into the war fighting against Russia, giving drones, missiles, billions of dollars. And we had a lot of people in Australia who were just blindsided. They fell for the, basically, it's a scam. It's a mainstream media bot attack. So those of you out there who are watching this and you were awake the whole time, congratulations for being on the right side of history again. But now, this evidence is emerging of these massive bot attacks, these social media manipulation to trick people with propaganda. And it's coming from none other than the Adelaide University in Australia. It's a very reputable source. And they published a paper where they talk about both sides. And they say that the 90% of the traffic was Ukrainian bots. So you could say 10% was actually real people. I mean, this channel, for example, we reported on the war, and I was sanctioned straight away on this channel. We were sanctioned, financially sanctioned, demonetized, deplatformed, closed, suspended, and that's what they do. So this is the tactic we see emerging in future warfare. And I implore, Russia and other countries to take note of this. This is how NATO conducts wars. They win the war online. Very interestingly, in Russia, everybody was mobilized except for IT people, right? Except for people that work with computers and so forth. Well, guess what the difference is between Russia and America? In America, in NATO, the people that are mobilized first are the IT people. They're the ones that go in, they're the ones that are taken by the informational structures, the military informational centers, and they start work straight away. So this is a lesson for everybody, and I hope Russia's listening. We were caught off guard. We were caught off guard. And it makes it very hard for people like us, people like me, people like you watching, to try and hold the line. Because we're not just up against people. We're not up against, fair income social media people. We're up against an army of bots. We're up against a system. We're up against an algorithm. We're up against an AI. In fact, we're up against something which in previous times in the 80s and the 90s, they made movies about this. That means that people just regurgitate, repost, rethink, spread whatever the bots tell them. Now, remember in the beginning of the war, all these woke lefty people, the people that used to wear 3 masks and get 7 jabs, all of a sudden they became Ukraine war experts. Now, where are the origins of the Twitter bot accounts? The researchers report that the overwhelming level of Twitter disinformation that was anti-Russian was from bots likely organized by pro-Ukrainian authorities. So guys, we have all been tricked. Billions and billions of dollars that were sent to Ukraine. It all started with a massive bot campaign. Just as with other things, guys. Just as with the millennial bug in 1999. Remember that? Just as with SARS and just as what happened with, the latest one, all this and the lockdowns and everything. It's called the system. Gets behind an idea, gets behind an ideology and pushes propaganda. Now, if you're watching this and you withstood the propaganda and you said, no, I stand with Russia, and you said no to this, I stand with Ukraine nonsense. Well done to you. Pat yourselves in the back. Let's take a moment of appreciation. And here's a round of applause to everyone out there who held the line and was, spot on. Now you can sit back and look, and you're right. Many people fell for the bot-generated propaganda. In May 2022, the National Security Agency NSA Director and US Cyber Command Chief General Paul Nakasone revealed that the Cyber Command had been conducting offensive information operations in support of Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an admission. General Paul Nakasone said, we've conducted a series of operations across the full spectrum, offensive, defensive, and information operations. Now, do you understand the things that we do, the things that I do, how hard it is? We not only have to fight the cops and fight the courts and you fight all these other things, fight censorship, but we're up against an organized system. And for anyone that's still standing, that's holding the line, for the few journalists out there who have got enough balls to speak up, like Tucker Carlson, like Graham Phillips, like Scott Ritter, politicians like Ricardo Bosi, like Senator Rennick in Australia. They're few and far between, but they're on the right side of history. And these people are the ones that stood against the 99% and pushed back. And that 99% now is dwindling. People have woken up. People have realized that this has all been a massive fake propaganda attack against their hearts and minds. People who say, hashtag I stand with Ukraine, they couldn't even show Ukraine on a map. But they were told by Twitter to do so. They were told by Facebook to do so. And shame on Facebook, promoting basically threats against Russians. Openly allowing people to post things, Russophobia, not even Russophobia, but on a genocidal level. I mean, if this was against any other nationality or any other religion, this was against Muslims or Jews, or anyone else, there would be an outrage, international outcry. But if it's against Russians, you can say whatever you like. Wars and lies in our pockets. With the rise of the internet, war and armed conflict will never be the same again, guys. Others have noted that the Ukraine-Russia conflict has ushered in a new digital era of military, political, and economic conflict being manipulated by laptop generals and bot armies. Right? Can I just say, I'm talking to Russia here. Get with the program. Ребята, возьмите в себя в руки. Информационная война, серьезная вещь. I'm just speaking out loud here so no one can accuse me of sending a covert message to Moscow. I'm very clear and open in what I do. But, using tanks and weaponry from the 60s and 70s and 1980s is great, fantastic. You've got 50,000 tanks, you've got, 200,000 artillery pieces and so forth. But if you've lost the informational war from day one, and it's not Russia's fault, of course. I mean, Russia didn't expect this to happen. No one knew that the West, and now we have admissions from American military generals that they did this on purpose. They attacked the hearts and minds of billions of people around the planet and convinced them to go against Russia. You see what's going on here? And many of you watching this, maybe some of you watching this even fell for it in the beginning. And many of you probably were writing comments under my videos, slandering me, accusing me of something. But regardless of whether I'm Russian or pro-Russian or not, I'm an Australian first and foremost, it's not about that. It's about getting the truth to people. People deserve to make their own decisions. Our mainstream media news in Australia blinded everybody, and they continue to spill out propaganda. Just look at some of the articles and news pieces they do. According to the mainstream media, Russia's already lost the war 500 times. But you look at a map of the current military situation, everything's going fine. The Russians have got exactly what they wanted. Now, propaganda has been a part of war since the beginning of history, but never before could it be so widely spread beyond an actual conflict there and targeted to so many different audiences. There are many people out there involved in the effort, volunteers such as myself, to counter the propaganda, right? And we are the underdogs. We are the underdogs. We haven't got the resources of the CIA. We haven't got the resources of the American military-industrial complex. We haven't got 5 million bot accounts, Imagine if we did. Imagine if I did. Imagine if this platform had all the resources that the enemy has. And that's what they're afraid of. That's why they attack this channel. That's why they attack my personality. That's why they attack me with financial sanctions, try and put me in prison. That's why they took down Assange. And by the way, we should free Assange, and we'll be there today for Assange in Sydney again. And we'll bring you footage of that coming up. CNN brought once distant wars into our living rooms, but TikTok and YouTube and Twitter have put them in our hearts and minds, in our pockets. Now, we are all carrying around with us a powerful source of information and news media. And also, most certainly, this information that's coming from relentlessly at us from influence operations. Influence operations, guys. Yes, I'm also seeking to influence. Also seeking to influence as much as possible. And I want to say thank you to Peter Croneau. And Peter is an award-winning investigative journalist. He's a writer and a filmmaker. His documentaries have appeared on ABC's Four Corners and Radio National's Background Briefing. He's the editor and co-founder of Declassified Australia, and this is a shout-out to Declassified Australia and to journalist Peter Croneau. I wish there were more journalists out there like Peter who've got the balls to stand up for truth and expose what the government has been doing. The Australian government's been involved in this. Richard Marles been involved in this, the Defence Minister. Penny Wong, the Foreign Minister. And thank you to all the Australians who said no to war and said Australia should not be involved. Australia should be neutral. Well done to you. You're going to go down in history on the right side of history. Penny Wong, you're going to go down the wrong side of history. Richard Marles, you're on the wrong side of history. Albanese on the wrong side of history. Scott Morrison on the wrong side of history. I know I'm very fired up, but it's good to find out the truth finally. And this whole conflict will be scrutinized and looked at by historians and investigative journalists for many decades to come. And everyone will be judged on their actions. And there are people out there, like you watching this channel, who'll be able to say, we were on the right side of history during this conflict. And we didn't fall for the current thing. We didn't fall for the, putting a Ukrainian flag on your profile picture and saying, let's kill Russians, or saying something against Russians. Russians are very dignified, honorable, and good people. They've never fought, almost never in history, an offensive war. These are defensive operations that they've been conducting on the borders. And in closing this video, I want everyone to share this. Share it to those people who are still blinded. Share it to those people who have no idea. Share it to those people who still are wearing 3 masks and 7 jabs and screaming, I stand with Ukraine. They don't even know what they stand for. They're blinded, but many people are weak. Many people are scared. They prefer to accept the mainstream media narrative because it saves them from having to think from themselves. And not having to think and just going with the flow, going with the status quo is what some people enjoy. Some people who are weak out there, they just cannot think for themselves. They're afraid. They're afraid to go against the system. Now, I'm not afraid to go against the system. In fact, I get a kick out of being defiant. That's been always in school, when I was growing up, always like that. And this is not only defiance. We're playing an important role. Because in some instances, at some times during the conflict, there were very few of us. Нас мало, но мы в тельняшках. Which means in Russian, there are not many of us, but, we're staunch. And guess what? We're showing the path for many others. So share this video. Show the path. Tell those people that are blinded and tricked by the American military-industrial complex, by the American intelligence agencies. And it's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, disgusting disgrace that Channel 9, Channel 10, Channel 7, ABC in Australia, together with all their presenters, we're all part of this. Just as they were part of this during the pandemic, the bastards. How many lives lost? How many families destroyed? They've got blood on their hands. Brad Hazard, David Elliott. We need a people's tribunal to investigate all your dealings. And well done to everyone again who was staunch, who saw through the propaganda, who was true to themselves, history, and who had the balls to stand up. Guys, it's not easy to stand up to the mainstream media. It's not easy to stand up to big government. It's not easy to stand up to the deep state. But there are some people that consistently stand up, consistently get it right. And it's only thanks to that 1%. It's only thanks to those people out there who stand up is why we've got any freedoms in this country. If it wasn't for those people who stand up, we would not have any freedom. We'd be still sitting on our couches wearing masks at home by ourselves, under home detention, watching the press conferences of Gladys Berejiklian and Kerry Chant. So all those grubs out there, Ray Hadley, you're a grub. All those guys, Andrew Bolt, Chris Smith, all the grubs from Sky News, Channel 9, Channel 10, Channel 7, who are spinning out the anti-Russian propaganda. Thank God Russia's patient. Thank God Russia's honorable. Thank God Russia can, forgive, but Russia will never forget. And if you're on the wrong side of history, your name will be recorded in the history books. Your Twitter accounts, your Facebook accounts, everywhere you've promoted your sick anti-Russian propaganda, to the level of a genocidal, Russophobic level. That's all recorded in history. So you better hurry up, go and delete everything. It may be already too late. There will be people's tribunals at the end of the war. We'll be looking at everything. Who did what? Who said what?